In it here now, what are you gonna do now? I'm gonna bid on here now. Who bid $500,000 bid?
Welcome to the Legacy of Agriculture. This program will explore the past, present, and future of agriculture. We'll look at the people, products, and events that have formed its history. And now, with today's guest, your host, Chris Bair.
Good morning, everybody. This is Chris Bair, your host of the Legacy of Agriculture. Thank you for joining us. Josh Erickson, you're back here with me again. It's the week before Christmas. It's the Saturday before Christmas. Can you believe how fast time has flown?
Oh my goodness, it feels like I blinked and we went from the new year to today.
As 2024 has progressed, I thought in January, 2024. And all of a sudden we were to August and I go, we're halfway done with 2024. And here we are just days before the end of 2024. We've been busy at the Southern Piper facility.
Yeah. You've kept me gainfully employed, that's for sure. There's been a lot of machinery coming in and out of the lot. And, you know, with the weather kind of holding nice, at least nice for South Dakota, right? We've had a lot of stuff after our December sale moving out very, very quickly. And our yard is, about as close to empty as you can get it. So now we've got stuff already showing up for March, which is a good problem to have when you're busy.
We sold on December the 3rd, we sold between 800 to 900 lots over a 2-day period of time. Mm-hmm. We had a great sale. We had a phenomenal sale in August. We were between 11 to 1,200 lots that we sold in 4 different rings over a two-day period of time as well. The Southern Pipers facility is just growing by leaps and bounds. 4 years ago, we lit the sign out front. I remember that day very well when we took over this facility. We were kind of out here by our lonesome. The building was empty. We had just finished cleaning it. We were painting, we were cleaning. And now here we are 4 years later, and I can remember the day that the sign got finished and we got new sides on the sign. We completely changed it over to LED lighting. I can remember the day we lit it. And what was crazy about that period of time, especially that first 18 months, the phone never rang and nobody walked through the front door. And now today, the phone rings all the time. People are coming and going. The growth has been substantial here at Piper south of Sioux Falls on I-29.
Yeah, and I think the attitude coming in, because I was not with you for your first auction, but I was with you for your first August auction at this facility. And for those of you who are listening who don't know, this was my first big boy job after college, right? I worked for a lot in my life.
You got your 4-year degree in history.
Yep.
And here you are working for an auction company. How does that work?
Trust me, I've asked myself the same question. I'm not quite sure, but it's it's entertaining, and I tell you what, it's a unique area to be learning in, and I've absolutely loved it. But one of the things that's probably been the coolest about working here is when you interact with the public, right? A good portion of my job working out in the yard is customer service. You kind of get a feel for people. And one thing that's been nice to see is watching the attitudes of people shift. When we first got our start here, you're the new kid on the block. And a lot of times folks are, maybe a little more suspicious. They don't quite know what kind of job you're going to do. But I believe, and I've seen this proved, if you're willing to put in the work, people will get used to that. They'll judge you based off of the quality of work you deliver. And so with our latest auction, now part of it's the festive season, right? I mean, we're December, we're almost Christmas. But part of it too is just the live auction and having everybody together for that. It's fun. People are excited. People are sitting there. It's cold outside. I don't know if you can hear it on the radio. We've got the wind howling, but everybody is warm inside and drinking coffee and just having a great time. And it's really nice to see, especially this time of year, because even though it's maybe a little bit dark and cloudy and dreary outside, there's still opportunities to go out and socialize and rub elbows with your neighbor. And I think people are getting used to that with us. And that's something that we provide. And you can tell in the way that they talk to our employees around here, they're excited to see us. They're excited to have a conversation. And I really enjoy that, especially this time of year.
I have to qualify what we're doing here. Usually we record, and Legacy of Agriculture has morphed over the last year and a half that we've been doing the Legacy of Agriculture. And even though we have been here at Pfeiffer's for over 4 years south of Sioux Falls, a lot of our radio shows are recorded at the WNAX Pfeiffer's Recording Studio down in Yankton, which offers the best audio, right? And sometimes we do it remote. Like last week, we were in the Erickson's home and had a great Christmas recording with Karen. And sometimes we're on the road and we do it various places. But just so you know, this is South Dakota, and we're sitting here in our theater just south of Sioux Falls. We got our Christmas tree in the background and all that. But we've got a 40, 50 mile an hour wind blowing right now. And so the noise that you hear on the background is the wind that's hitting our building, and it is windy and miserable. And so everybody's inside, working inside today rather than being outside. So if you hear a little bit of noise, it's because the wind's blowing. So you'll have to forgive us for that.
Well, I mean, I'd certainly prefer recording remote like we're doing now than driving down to Yankton in this weather from Sioux Falls. Personally, I don't really want to be blown all across the interstate myself. So
yeah, when you go down I-29, which is a north-south freeway that goes from Canada or Winnipeg, Canada, all the way to almost Dallas, Texas, you know the wind's blowing by the number of empty van trucks that are tipped over in the ditch or jackknifed in the ditch because they're empty and the wind blows them over on their side.
And yeah, you know, I think it's kind of getting that season where people are okay with bundling up, staying indoors, spending time with family. And I don't blame them. I really don't.
You know, we just got a couple of minutes in the first segment. The next 3 segments we're going to dedicate to the Christmas season and some of the history behind the Christmas season. But as we wrap up the first segment, I do want to talk a little bit about a farm auction that we had earlier in the week up in Fergus Falls, Minnesota. We did a retirement sale for Gillespie Farms. It was a absolutely phenomenal sale. There were hundreds and hundreds of people that were participating in that auction. And just so you know, Josh, and you can follow our Facebook feed, Pfeiffer Sioux Falls Facebook feed, but we sold a planter for over $397,000.
Really?
We sold 9 quad tracks for almost record-breaking prices. All of the equipment, tillage equipment, we sold a cultivator that sold for $126,000, which is almost unheard of in the auction industry. So I am very, very proud of Pfeiffer's for continuing to stay and be in the live auction process and combining all of the technology on the online bidding process, the simulcast bidding process, and then incorporating it back into a career and a profession that's over 2,000 years old, which is the live auctioneer. And Pfeiffer's has been able to take tradition, a 2,000-year-old profession, incorporate all of the technology, and better serve the sellers and get great auction results as a result of it.
Well, in Fergus Falls, Minnesota, it's Minnesota in the wintertime. The fact that we're able to weatherproof those auctions with the online platform as well as climate-controlled theaters, I mean, I think it's just amazing. I mean, 50 years ago, when my grandpa was still buying at auctions, he never would have guessed at stuff like that. You're just trotting along behind the truck, and if you're cold, you're cold.
Yep. We're coming down to the end of our first segment. We're going to take a commercial break and a little bit of break here. We're going to be back with the second segment in just a few minutes. Josh Erickson has joined us and is my guest today on the Legacy of Agriculture. Josh, thank you for joining us.
Hi, this is Jasmine at Pfeiffer's Auction, Realty, and Land Management. Pfeiffer's offers multiple ways to bid and buy at our equipment and land auctions. You can bid online, in person, or place pre-bids before the sale even starts. By providing convenient bidding platforms, we make sure that you can buy the items or parcels you want the way you want to. Visit Pfeiffers.com to see a complete list of our auctions. When it comes to bidding, go with Pfeiffer's. Nobody does it better.
Folks, we're back with the Legacy of Agriculture. I'm your host, Chris Bair. Josh Erickson, who has a degree in history
Yeah, they even gave it to me. They let me pass. It's pretty amazing.
Did they give you the paper and everything?
They mailed it. I didn't walk. So
they figured you were worth a certificate.
Apparently,
rather than just sending you an email and
spelled
saying,
my name right and everything.
You're good to go.
Yep.
You're good to go. So anyways, the Christmas season is actually my favorite time of year. I absolutely love Christmas. I love the atmosphere. I love the hustle and bustle of it. I kind of have a tendency to try to avoid some of the negativity that comes with Christmas, but it's the holidays. And we at Pfeiffer Auction Realty and the Legacy of Agriculture teams want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. We believe in worshiping. We believe in Christianity. We absolutely love the Christmas season and the birth of the Savior, and it's great to be a part of WNX Radio and be a part of such a tremendous group of people here in the Midwest. We absolutely love it. But, one of the things, and last week we interviewed Karen Erickson, who talked almost extensively about being raised on a dairy farm. And as a little girl, some of the traditions that they had raised on a dairy farm where money just wasn't abundant. It was years that you got down to the end of the year and you were thankful that you could keep farming, that you could keep the cows and keep milking, and raised in an era where times were tough, and it was very interesting to listen to her stories. And everybody has traditions, and in the Legacy of Agriculture, of course, we explore agriculture, both past, present, and future, as what our intros always say. And I can remember some of the family traditions that I had growing up, which was, number one, I was raised on a farm. And my dad always said that before we open presents, before we have breakfast, before we do anything, the animals always get fed. We didn't have a lot of animals when I was really young. We had a small cow-calf operation. But as I got older, I was the second to the youngest in my family. And my dad sold the cattle and stayed directly into row cropping. But even the animals that we had on the farm, whether it was one animal or whether it was 5 or 6 or 10, they always got fed. My dad believed in that. He always did that. And the other tradition that was very, that has carried me to present day is my mom always, after Christmas presents, always invited all of the neighbors that didn't have somewhere to go for Christmas. And we were very rural. We were very remote. We knew all of our neighbors. A lot of them belonged to the same church. And my mom would always invite them Christmas morning, about 9, 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, for homemade cinnamon rolls, link sausage, scrambled eggs, and I don't know how many dozens of eggs we cracked to make scrambled eggs for everybody. And and we had a great big oval oak table that Mom would put all the leaves in and extend that table out. And it actually became a community event that everybody looked forward to. Is if you didn't have family and you were going to spend Christmas morning alone, come to the Bears. We'll feed you. Make sure you have a great Christmas. And that's a tradition that I always feel. But let's talk about some of the older traditions when it comes to Christmas. Where did Christmas come from? Obviously, we know some of that, but go ahead.
I gotta say, it's always great to hear about traditions like that. And trust me, I've got a lot to say on Christmas traditions. I'm a nerd about history, but I love hearing that because my family has done something similar. And there's just it's that time of year where people they want to be more welcoming. They want to be the best of us, and they want to be the type of people who bring other folks into their home, who find a way to feed the world. And maybe you don't have a lot, but you share what you have. And it's a spirit of charity, and I think that really is, that's something beautiful to see. Christmas as a holiday, and a huge shout out to the History of Rome podcast. Mike Duncan is a historian. He does some excellent research. He had a whole episode specifically on, obviously, just the Roman section of Christmas. So we'll touch on that a little bit, but if you want more info, check out his show. But Christmas, originates actually in the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire, for those of you who don't know, was the dominant world power at the time of Christ's birth. But we don't know the exact day Jesus was born. What we do know is that festivals around December timeframe, like holiday festivals, are cross-cultural. So whether you were a Christian, whether you were a pagan, whether you were living in completely opposite ends of the world, people celebrate right about that middle of winter time, usually about the winter solstice, because ultimately you need a reason to smile and to laugh, because
especially in December.
Especially in December. Well, you think about it, as an agrarian society, right now we live in a world where we don't have to think about where our food's coming from.
Right.
Now, people in the agriculture world do, because they're in that business, but your majority of people living in a city, they don't consider stuff like that. That wasn't the case even 100 years ago. Farming was much more integrated into the daily life of a higher percentage of the population. And when that's your life is storing stuff for the winter. It's knowing when the growing season ends and when you have to be rationing. So this midwinter festival usually was kind of a way to not be so bummed out, you know? I mean, the weather's dreary. You know that pretty soon you're going to have to start watching what you eat to watch your figure, make sure that the storehouses are full for the winter.
That's not the case now.
No,
obviously.
No, it is not. Yeah. And so, you know, they had these parties where the Romans would throw decorations all through their houses, and they would, the caroling tradition actually comes from them, where they would go house to house singing songs. Now, the Romans did it maybe with a little bit more tongue-in-cheek, a little bit more risque, but before Christianity had kind of co-opted the holiday, that winter season festival was a time when people were just trying to be happy and smiley and have a reason to look forward to in these really dark, dreary seasons. After the birth of Christ, there's several hundred years where Christianity is kind of a hush-hush subject, right? And these are very tough times for people who were religious. There's a lot of persecution, but a gentleman, I shouldn't say a gentleman, an emperor by the name of Constantine, people call him Constantine the Great, came into power, and as the story goes, he converted to Christianity right before a major battle. Some historians argue that he wasn't actually a Christian. He did it more for political reasons. Other people say, well, obviously he was. He converted on his deathbed, and it's the truth. And whether he was or not, a very important policy change happened during his time where Christianity was no longer outlawed through the Roman Empire. And for those of you who know the phrase, all roads lead to Rome, it's big, and
right.
it's very well connected. So at that time, when Christianity stops being outlawed, it can spread much quicker. Constantine's only problem is they have all these pagan midwinter festivals. At the time, a festival of the Invincible Sun, Sol Invictus. And he doesn't like the idea that people aren't celebrating the state religion. They're still doing all of these things right around midwinter, so he declares that as the official birthday of Jesus Christ. Now, some people say that Christ was born sometime in spring or possibly summer, but whenever Jesus was born, at that time period, during his reign and during the reign of the subsequent emperors, it becomes a state holiday to celebrate. We set aside this part of the year specifically for the celebration of the birth of Jesus Christ. And that will continue through the end of the empire and all the way to the modern day.
All right. Folks, we're coming down to the end of our second segment. Josh Erickson, historian and connoisseur of a lot of important history, has joined me as my guest again here on the Legacy of Agriculture. Josh gets to be on quite a bit, and because we're a podcast about history, we're a show about history, and we absolutely love agriculture. We think agriculture, the whole world revolves literally around agriculture because we all have to eat, right?
Last I checked, yeah.
So we're coming down to the end of our last segment. We want to thank our sponsor, Pfeiffer Auction Realty, for a complete listing of all of the auctions that we got coming in the spring of 2025. You'll want to go to our website at pfeifers.com or simply give us a call, 605-836-2277. Nobody, Josh, does it better.
Hey, this is Jasmine at Pfeiffer's Auction Realty and Land Management. Pfeiffer's offers multiple ways to bid and buy at our equipment and land auctions. You can bid online, in person, or place pre-bids before the sale even starts. By providing convenient bidding platforms, we make sure that you can buy the items or parcels you want the way you want to. Visit Pifers.com to see a complete list of our auctions. When it comes to bidding, go with Pifers. Nobody does it better.
Folks, we're back. I'm Chris Bair, your host of the Legacy of Agriculture. We're into segment number 3 on the Legacy of Agriculture. And if you've missed any of the shows on WNX Radio, you can go to our other social media platforms on Apple, Spotify, and also now on YouTube. You can get all of our shows, and also on the legacyofagriculture.com. We've got almost all of our shows recorded there, so you can go back and visit and go right back when we started the Legacy of Agriculture almost 18 months ago. And it has become a very interesting undertaking now that we're getting some time under our belt. We've had some really, really fun shows that we have done over time. So go back and visit some of those shows. You'll enjoy them. You'll like them. Download them. And now we have on Facebook a Legacy of Agriculture Facebook page. You can go in and make comments there if you would like. And we are also posting now some of our shows on our Legacy of Agriculture Facebook page, right, Josh?
Yeah. So you can find links to our website there, and usually clips that will show our upcoming guests, that kind of thing. So I'd highly recommend taking a look at that, giving us a like. We'd love to see you on that platform.
So in the last segment, we talked a little bit about the history of Christmas. In our first segment, we talked about a little bit about what's going on present. But what were some of your traditions growing up in your household as a little boy and into your teens and now into your 20s?
You know, a big one. So for those of you who don't know, we've mentioned last week's podcast with Karen Erickson, I believe twice now. Karen Erickson, you call her that, but I have to call her mom. Otherwise, I'll get in trouble. So
she is a good cook.
Yes, and so Christmas cookies was a big one. And I tell you what, I loved that.
You know what? When we were there recording at her house last week, I got no Christmas cookies.
I'm okay with that.
You're okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
But I'm not okay with it.
You'll get over it.
Eventually.
Or not. Yeah.
But the thing is I know where she lives.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not hard to find, the Ericksons, and we're pretty chatty. So
well, there's getting to be a lot of you around.
This year in March will be, I believe, 9 nieces and nephews. And then I have 3 older brothers. They're all married. And yeah, it's family gatherings. That's always been big around the holiday season. I tell you what, they're starting to get a little louder and maybe a little bit more chaotic. But
I've been to some of these Erickson quote unquote shindigs, and I'm telling you, that's a lot.
It is, and you know, in a strange way, it's definitely a lot. And you're usually like, you're a little tired afterwards, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, you just sit there
exhausted, not tired. Let's use the proper term.
That's
exhausted.
True. Yeah, and as you leave, you kind of wonder. You're like, man, is that what mom and dad put up with when I was a kid at Christmas? And it's just strange. Yeah, and you're like, probably.
Impossible.
Yeah.
Impossible.
So,
as a matter of fact, your mom had to get a new hip to get through the Christmas season.
Oh yeah. Oh
it's
yeah.
So crazy.
No, it's been a lot of fun. And so one of the things that was always big to her, and so big to me growing up, was the tradition of the Christmas tree. That was something that was very important in her household. So it became an event in our household, right? We all got together and we would hang ornaments together. We'd play Christmas music, or sometimes we'd watch some of the classic shows like Rudolph or Santa Claus is Coming to Town. And I will say one of the best parts about that was that it was quality time together. We would try and, you know, my parents worked very hard, and I think that we were very, very well off as a family growing up, because we always had a roof over our head, we always had food on the table. But when you were little, you kind of got that possessiveness. It's all about what you're going to get. As you grew older, what was interesting, as I matured, it was interesting to watch that become less and less and less, where, you know, if you get a present on Christmas, yeah, that's kind of cool. But what's more important is you get to sit down and have a cup of coffee with your dad, or you get to chat with your brother who you haven't seen in a while. And so one of the things that I think they tried to instill through these traditions, like family time around the Christmas tree, more than just yes, we're all getting things, was the importance of what they saw as the reason of the season, which is community. And I absolutely loved it, you know?
Traditions as a child growing up, you think, traditions are miserable. Or why do we have to decorate the Christmas tree? And everything goes into it, and everybody kind of goes crazy. But as you get older, you appreciate more and more all the time the importance of family tradition and the family coming together. I remember very well my grandmother as a little boy, and we talked about this last week. Is my dad had two older brothers, and it was huge when the family all got together, and it was always on Christmas Eve. My grandmother on my dad's side would spend days cooking, getting ready for this Christmas Eve event that always took place. Dinner always started at 6 o'clock in the evening on Christmas Eve, and then everybody helped with the dishes. And my grandmother was a pianist and taught piano lessons for 30 plus years and always got paid in silver dollars. It was back in the day when silver dollars had the same value as a paper dollar, and got paid in silver dollars. But it was very important to my grandmother that all of us get together. And you got to remember, I come from a family of football players. I come from a family of wrestlers, of farmers, and they don't like to sing. And my grandmother would get on the piano and she would start playing Christmas songs that should have been very common and were very common to everybody. But to get those ornery boys and those ornery kids to sing Christmas carols to make my grandmother happy was just like pulling teeth out of an angry grizzly bear, literally. But I could remember my uncles and my dad, they couldn't carry a tune in a bucket, and they'd all be singing off to Silent Night, Holy Night, and my grandmother would just be red-faced. But it created a beautiful tradition and something that was very, very memorable for me and my family. And that tradition carried on is I still enjoy doing things with my kids on Christmas Eve. And I talked about it in an earlier segment of having cinnamon rolls and link sausage and creating that Christmas morning environment. We still do that today at this date. And my kids are going to be here next week to visit me in South Dakota, and we're going to carry that tradition on. Folks, I'm Chris Bair, the host of the Legacy of Agriculture. We're down to the end of our third segment, and we're going to be right back with our fourth segment. Josh, thank you for joining us. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Jasmine at Pfeiffer's Auction Realty and Land Management. Pfeiffer's offers multiple ways to bid and buy at our equipment and land auctions. You can bid online, in person, or place pre-bids before the sale even starts. By providing convenient bidding platforms, we make sure that you can buy the items or parcels you want the way you want to. Visit Pfeiffers.com to see a complete list of our auctions. When it comes to bidding, go with Pfeiffers. Nobody does it better.
Hey folks, this is Josh Erickson, and I am not your host of the Legacy of Agriculture, but I'm a frequent enough guest I think I can get this down all right. So last segment, we were talking a little bit about Christmas traditions, and Chris has kindly invited me back onto his podcast, and we talked a little bit about what families do together and the kind of things that have carried on in our families. And Chris, you were telling me a little bit about your cinnamon roll tradition and your Christmas morning breakfast, and I absolutely loved that, because that is something like, I had a teacher one time say, what do people do when they get together? They eat, right? And that's, I mean, you look at
That's common.
Exactly.
It's
You look
very
at
common.
Thanksgiving, you look at Easter. The holidays are a reason to get together, to have a meal together, and to just enjoy one another's company. And so to hear that as something that's important for families, I really, really enjoy that.
What are some of the other traditions that you guys have carried forward over the years? Now, I know you're out of the house. Your mom and dad are empty nesters, but are there traditions that you still carry as a family now?
You know, one of the big ones that we try to do is church. And it's kind of, as people go their separate ways, it kind of can go to church with maybe your own smaller unit, your wife or your kids, that kind of thing. But if we can get together, it's nice to go to church as a family. Another one is once in the season, we try and get everybody together, which is that chaos we were talking about earlier. And I think that as those traditions have changed, as it's become less about the Christmas morning or the breakfast and more about when you can get people together, even if it's, maybe it's 2 days after Christmas or 4 days after Christmas, as long as there's the ability to get together during the season, it seems like that's enough. And what's kind of amazing about that is that the reason for us getting together is solely to be around each other and to love each other as a family, to love our community. Mom talked about bringing out Christmas cookies to other folks and stuff like that. I still see my parents do to this day. And it really set an example that, this is a season where charitable giving is important, where it's important to try and get out of your comfort zone to help your fellow man, especially because it's cold and it's dreary. And so I've tried to carry that on in my personal life as well, where this is the season where you do work a little harder to try and be more charitable. And obviously that's the type of thing that should occur all year round, but it's nice to have those annual reminders to wake you up a little bit, because these people who are around you, one of the facts of life is they're not around forever. So the time with them, when you realize that, becomes so much more precious.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a season. I think a person could wrap that up by saying it truly is a season of giving. It always has been. It's always been about tradition. It's always been a Christ-centered or a Christian-based holiday that is very, very important to our cultures. It's very important to our families. It's very important to even in our work environment. I know that in our work environment that you and I work in, we try to do our very best to be conscious of each other. And as hard as you try to divide work from personal life, it's almost impossible to do that because you care, what's going on, and you almost, in a way, our culture has gotten away from, in some aspects, gotten away from that caring and sharing. But I think in today's day and age, it's just as important to have that caring environment, especially during this time of year.
I 100% agree. And that the common part of the Christmas story, the angels visiting the shepherds, I've always loved that because, if you think about folks in agriculture, I grew up around that, and they're not always the kind of people you see maybe as movie stars, right? You're working with your hands, you're working in the mud, you're working with animals, right? And these are the people who God initially announced the birth of his son to. And that line there, right? Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace to men on whom his favor rests. I think that if we're going to continue with this tradition now, 2025 years after the birth of Christ, we really have to keep that in focus, the idea that firstly, there is that glory to God, right? This is a season of remembrance of what that gift was about. And then secondly, peace on earth and goodwill to men. The news cycle, and everybody loves to decry this, is always very negative, but this is a time of year where we can remember the idea that maybe we can all be friends with one another. Maybe we can all be a little kinder to one another. And throughout history, that has been a recurring theme of this season.
I think you brought up something that I think is very important as we're coming down to the end of this segment of the legacy of agriculture and coming to the end of the year. We've only got one more podcast in 2024. As I would like to challenge all of our listeners to be more conscious of their neighbors, be more conscious of your coworkers, have a little kinder spirit, be more understanding of those people that are around you, because that's the way that we should be. This does not have to be the mean, rough, and tough world that sometimes is portrayed to us. I can't say that word.
That's like
Here I am, right? But as as we work our way through the Christmas season and the holidays into the new year, I think it's very, very important that we keep that in mind. Would you agree?
Yeah, and New Year's, as we go towards it, it's a time of new beginnings, and it's the idea that we love the hope that comes with it, that we can be maybe a little bit better than we were the year before. And what I think is wonderful is that this is a season of hope. It's a season where people are focused on the idea that things can be dark, but we have the ability to make them better. And ultimately, that optimism, that belief that things will improve if we're just willing to put in the effort, I think that'll, at the risk of being too optimistic, I think that will lead to a better world.
It's very simply the light of Christ. That's what it is. Absolutely, 100%. There's no other way to put it. There's no other way to put it. And the one thing that I would like to challenge our listeners to do, and I don't give homework assignments, but one thing that's also really fun, and I did just a little bit of this in preparing for the show, is folks, go on to whatever platform you do your searching on the internet and search out some of the traditions, like the candy cane. Growing up, what's the deal with the candy cane? Well, the candy cane represents the shepherd's hook or the shepherd's staff, or what the shepherds used when they came to visit the Christ child. There's tons and tons and tons of information out there that's good, healthy, when you're sitting around the Christmas tree, or you're enjoying the holidays, or even, unfortunately, if you have to spend Christmas by yourself. Get on your personal device or on your computer and look up Christmas traditions. What are some of the symbolisms behind Christmas, and how does that relate to agriculture? And almost always it comes back to food, right?
And while you're doing that, look for a need that you can fill this season. Even if you feel like you are in need, look for a way to help other people. I guarantee you, if you're trying to search out people in need of help, you won't have trouble finding them.
Absolutely. Well, folks, we are down to the end of our segment, number 4 in the legacy of agriculture, and we want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. We want to wish them a happy holidays, and thank you very much for supporting our program all through 2024. And we want you to have a Merry Christmas and enjoy time with your family and your friends and your neighbors, coworkers, whoever you're spending Christmas with. And we'll be back next week.
In it here now, what are you gonna do now? I'm gonna been on here now, who bid $500,000 bid.
We hope you've enjoyed today's edition of The Legacy of Agriculture with Chris Bair, sponsored by Pfeiffer's Auction, Realty, and Land Management. Call Pfeiffer's at 605-836-2277.